darkness and the war. The legions in our hearts shed waters in our balls. The spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest. The cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within.
And a little, let us take a look at that. We see the bubble indeed. Shout out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Moderators, you have the chat. Shout out to Nicer in the house. Shout out to Nicer in the house. Yeah, that's a pretty fire stream going on down the aisle over there. Mr. Man in action. Shout out to you. Woosa. Breathe. Whoa. Take a deep breath. Woosa. We've heard these phrases before. Shout out to Majid Podcast in the house. He said. Shout out to Snuggles in the house. Morning. Afternoon, evening. Good night. So, part 2 on the How to Meditate series. Part 2 on the How to Meditate series. Part 1, if we recall, was about establishing the landscape, establishing the options, where we say, hey, you're going to develop this capacity, but what are your options vis-a-vis the kinds of exercises? What are the differences? Like, what's the roadmap here? Okay. You're telling me I need to develop certain capacities like concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity. It'll help me in the mastery of my subjective consciousness if I apply these capacities to the feelings of my body and the images in my head and so on and so forth. But what are my options? Just like if somebody came to you and said, hey, cardiovascular strength, cardiovascular health, you need to work your lungs and your heart, make sure the blood vessels are working well and so on and so forth. You would tell them you could swim, run, jog, elliptical treadmill. You could play tennis. You could play soccer. You could play basketball, right? And all these are formal ways of exercising that particular capacity, operating on the basic formula of use it or lose it. If you're going to develop something, you simply use it. And exercises, whether they be intellectual exercises or physical exercises, are formal ways of using something so that you develop it or so that you maintain it, because use it or lose it is way more than just development. As a matter of fact, simple maintenance, simply not losing it, ladies and gentlemen, in the chat and those listening. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ike Okiamin. I'm your host, and thank you for showing up today. Thank you for listening to this. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Over here, we talk about being and doing. And things are presented in a simple, measurable, actionable, and intuitive way. Shout out to K Coaching in the building. I messed around and opened up a Patreon account, and I'll be figuring out what exactly the benefits of the Patreon situation will be. But I will tell you guys, okay? Don't hesitate. All right? Don't hesitate to become a patron on the Patreon and leave a little nickel in the basket, because I'm very, very thankful, glad, grateful. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I appreciate the fact that you guys support, you subscribe, you watch, you engage. We have a good time over here. So let's continue to have a good time. Go become a patron and let's rock and roll. So basically, how do you meditate? So in part one, we talked about, okay, you're going to use formally your capacities, right? Concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity. And you're going to use it in the landscape of the body. Okay, you have sensations in the body, and you also have the five senses. In other words, perceptions and sensations. Okay. And you're going to use this capacity, just like you would use your biceps on a dumbbell. You're going to use concentration on perceptions of your feelings. You're going to use concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity in a formal way, like a formal exercise, like doing curls, but paying attention to your body. So we said that's one area, right? And that you can go in through the senses. You can use your ears as an access point for formal exercises and meditations. You could use your eyes, right? You can use all the external senses. You can also use feelings in the body. And today we're starting out with feelings in the body, and we're talking about breathing. Breathing is the access point, the formalism, the modality, what we're going to be playing with in order to get access to the feelings in the body so that we can exercise these particular capacities we are trying to develop. Let me get a one in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, if that makes sense. We're trying to develop these capacities. We need to exercise them. We need to use them formally, and these capacities of concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity can be used in the body or in the mind. Today, we're going to focus on one body aspect, which is the breathing aspect, ladies and gentlemen. Orlando Johnson in the house. Sandman in the house. And I got a one. We got a one, and that's good enough to get us going. Okay? We got a few ones. So the breathing aspect, the breathing aspect is something that we have all heard a lot about. It's common, ubiquitous, so on and so forth. And we'll get into it and we'll make sure that we go back. As a matter of fact, let me do this because I want to make it clear and simple what we're doing. And that's why I keep going back to the analogy of any other kind of exercise. In order to develop a capacity, you simply use it. Okay. We have formal ways of using capacities. Let's say you take your biceps and triceps. Okay. There's a formal way, which means it's this formal dance you do with a barbell, right? And that helps to develop that particular thing. And then you go and you use the thing to do other things. Mastery of subjective consciousness, which involves the use of concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity, being able to observe yourself happen, feelings in the body arise, image in the head arise, talk in the head arise, to be able to be the master of that whole dance, be the weatherman watching the weather rather than being caught up in the weather, being in your head, being in your feelings, as we say, right? There are certain capacities that you can develop. We talked about it. We had a whole 4-part series on why you should meditate, right? 4 parts, each video, at least 1 hour, talking about why, right? 4 parts. And then we started with the how. So we're going to get down to brass tacks, but still, because we like to keep things simple and we don't like to go into woo-woo land and we don't like to go into, well, I don't understand land or excuses land or that's too complicated land. No, that's not what we do over here. We keep things very simple, very measurable, very intuitive, very actionable. You can simply just go and do it and you realize what you're doing. It's not some kind of magic. No one is telling you about putting good vibes into the universe and stuff like that. We're saying you want to use your biceps or you want to train your biceps, you want to make them bigger, you got to use it. Okay. And then there's these other capacities which have to do with your subjective consciousness, some of which we are quite aware of, like concentration, right? The ability to concentrate can be less or more. It can be honed, it can be trained, it can deteriorate, right? Same thing with the ability to be calm, which is what equanimity is about. That can be trained. It can get worse too. Same thing with sensory clarity. So these things, when applied to ourselves, we're going to actively work them out just the same way we would actively, in a formal way, use barbells for our muscles. So using breathing, we're going to practice concentration and relaxation by observing the body using breathing as the entry point, right? That is basically the scenario we got in here. That is what we're doing in here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, thank you, thank you for stopping by, for showing up, for showing the love. So let's get into it. Let me go ahead and share this real quick so that we can do what needs to be done. Do what needs the doing, ladies and gentlemen. So we shall share it in this manner. We should share it like this. Using the breath, okay? And I think that for me, because I'm going to be sharing certain, because again, remember the reason why we're going to lay out the landscape, the reason why we laid out the landscape in the last video was so that we could tell people, hey, you don't like riding bicycles, then you could jog. You don't like jogging, you could play basketball. You don't like basketball, you could play tennis. You don't like tennis, you could play volleyball. But you can do these things to improve your cardiovascular strength and health. Same way here. You got to meditate, okay? These capacities, okay? They're not like your biceps, but they're there and we can recognize them and we know that they can be trained. But they're also, just like cardio, a bunch of options. So you don't have to be the hot Kundalini yoga guy or the mantra guy or the Zen guy, or you don't, there are a bunch of options. Okay. Some people don't like running. You don't have to run. You can swim. But as long as we keep clear in our minds what exactly we're doing, right? Not necessarily for you, as far as we're going to get practical and lay out some exercises and things, and I'll talk about my preferences and so on and so forth. But I try to make it clear what exactly we're doing from a meta level. What exactly is it that we're doing? And it's very simple. You can explain it to a 5-year-old. And that's how you know you understand stuff. So we understand what we're doing here. We're simply using formally a capacity, right? Using formally a power, right? And by so doing, developing it. Okay. We have already had a few videos and we already use and talk about these powers, right? And how they affect our lives in many ways. We have a whole series on why to meditate. So, formally develop, right, through formal exercise, use concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity. So, I'm just going to refer to that as CSE, just like we talk about fit over here, feeling in the body, image in the head, and talk in the head, right? Fit, feeling, image, talk, concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity. These are the capacities. Feeling, image, and talk, that's the stuff that happens inside you. And you need those capacities in order to be able to be master of that stuff that happens inside you, which is the feelings, the image in your head, and the talk. In your head, in your head, in your head. Yes, 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 yes. So, those few words there broke down the intro portion of this, broke down exactly what we're trying to do. Okay? And we're going to have a good time with this because we're going to try to make sure that we are all coming along at the same pace. That's why these series is stretched out from a why you should meditate 4 parts to a how you should meditate, which would be a lot more than 4 parts, because it's like saying how to do cardio. It's like, okay, we're going to talk about cycling, we're going to talk about biking, we're going to talk about swimming, jogging, and everything. We're going to give you all the options so you don't have any excuse, and so that at least you know what is going on. So it's not mysterious anymore. So it's not weird, right? So it's not some crazy stuff. It's like, no, it's just like your biceps. We have formal ways of training all kinds of capacities. You sit and you do tests. You sit and you read a book. That's a formal way of training your brain. But that's not the only time your brain is getting trained or used. Your brain is getting mostly trained and used the rest of the time. But we go to the gym and we formally use our biceps. That's not the only time we use our biceps, but it's the way to get the biceps better, to keep them from atrophying, so on and so forth. So the same way, there are formal ways of using concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity to get better. In this particular video, okay, today, where are we? Which area are we? We're in the body, okay? Because you can use image in the head and talk in the head as well, okay? These are all just different mediums, different media, each being a particular medium for going in, right? Just like Wayman Brown says. Controlling the breath, the entry for controlling one's thoughts, subsequently, one's life, indeed. So, we are using the breath and we're in the body, okay? We're in the body and we are in an area in the body which I like to call internal sensations. Everybody take a deep breath right now, okay? What is that thing that happens when you take a deep breath? Why do people say take a deep? Why is that the most common one? It's almost like if there was a first aid kit in terms of the meditation landscape, the first aid kit, the little thing that you can do, break this. Is the breathing. What do you feel when you breathe? It's the body you feel. And feeling the body now gives you access because you now become an observer of a weather pattern, a system, something that's making you do some crazy stuff. Okay. And that's why someone's telling you to, hey, breathe, right? Now, when you feel the body, you all of a sudden have a better chance of not being swayed by it because when you observe, when you perceive, you can then proceed rather, to control. Attention and observation, perception precedes control. So we breathe. But the point is, this is body land, okay? We're in the land of the body and we're feeling internal sensations, is mainly what this whole breathing thing consists in for the most part. And these are non-emotional internal sensations. Can I get a one in the chat if you understand what I mean by non-emotional internal sensations? So we have a body, right? And we talked about the external perceptions. We know those ones. We know our five senses and all that kind of stuff. Okay. And then internally, we also have sensations in there. Some of them are emotions, right? But what we're looking at today, and let me get a one in the chat if it is clear, or ask, or let me know. What we're getting at today are non-emotional sensations. These sensations could even be like a craving or something, right? But more clearly, the breathing is just to sense the body. Practice concentration using the body as a medium. Practice equanimity, which is relaxation, not being swayed, right? Staying on the mark, being in control. Using sensations in the body as a medium. So the sensations are not emotional because we can get to those, like that's also another, maybe that's like the bicycling, right? But today we're talking about swimming. Okay. So swimming is you're using the breathing, practicing concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity on sensations in the body, using the breathing as an entry point and as a formalism. In other words, counting the breaths, and the breathing is what you're using to create the forms, the shapes, the modes, which makes it a formal practice, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone is doing very well this 2021. I know that I am doing excellent out here back in the Bay Area, as you can see. So let's get right into it then. Okay. Let's talk about one key aspect, which is that formality is key. What do I mean by that? What I mean is just like you don't go to the gym, okay, because the whole point of working out your biceps and working out your cardiovascular system is so you can go out and live, right? You don't just do it for gym purposes, okay? So it is true, just like that. We do know, yes, that the point of meditation is so that you can actually go out there and do and be in that mode. Like a well-trained runner, bicep, good posture, eating right, breathing right, living right out there in the world. Same thing here. You are practicing these capacities so you can actually go out there and use them or just be them. Okay. But when you're in the gym, you don't just say, oh, I'll just do whatever I want. I'll just pick up the light weights and kind of just flutter around. Oh, you know what? I'll just look at the barbell today. I'm just going to look at the machines. You know what? I'm just going to walk into it. No, there is a formality to it. There is a formalism. You have to do the actual work in a formal way. So don't get all hippie with it, okay? It's not, oh, just letting the universe, whatever, and maybe I'll pop a pill or something. No. As grown folks, intelligent grown folks over here, we know that nothing works that way. Okay. As a matter of fact, it's even silly for me to mention it, but it's important that formality, okay, the structure and also the struggle are necessary for training. There's a difference between, and I had a conversation, the first appearance of Dr. Thunder, whom will be appearing monthly in this channel, coming soon to a YouTube device near you. Ladies and gentlemen, the first appearance of Dr. Thunder, we talked about the cost of pursuing your passions, and he talked about the fact that there's a difference between jamming, because he's a musician, amongst other things. There's a difference between jamming, playing, and practicing. You could just go in and you could just jam. You could go in and you could play your saxophone. But practicing is when you have that, can't quite, crap. Your pinky finger is not moving quite well to hit that right key on the piano, or there is some struggle, right? So that is important in all, because the reason I mention it is because we tend not to ignore this in exercise, right? We don't go to the gym, as I said, and just look at the bicycle. No, you got to ride the bicycle. Don't just hang around and be like, whatever the universe. No, same thing here. However, people tend to do it here because whenever you can fool something, whenever you can game a system, whenever it's easy to do it, as is the case with things that are not tangible like biceps, right? At least I can see your biceps, so I can see that you're losing weight. But I can't really tell, okay, how much work you're doing with that meditation thing, right? So people can just escape the formality. But no, formality is key the same way that posture and poise is key, because posture and poise, or holding certain postures, is also a way of exercising concentration and equanimity and balance and relaxation. In other words, concentration and equanimity, the combination of which is that thing which we call being in the zone, highly concentrated but also highly relaxed, being able to hold certain positions, okay, because we're in body land, okay, we're talking body, using the breath, and we're talking about, obviously, breathing is a physical thing. It involves moving of diaphragms and so on and so forth, okay? So it's not slouching on the chair like this or something. No. The reason why there's the lotus position with the spine straight and so on and so forth is for obvious reasons. It's why you think it is. It's not some kind of magical thing like some people like to make it seem. No. Posture and poise is key, just like you would think it would be. Okay. Again, whether you are doing your barbells, there's a right form to it. Same thing with any kind of exercise, physical, mental, whatever it may be, right? And meditation, this particular kind of exercise, which is about subjective consciousness, not very easy for us to define and grab a hold of, and it's not very commonly discussed, but it's not different from anything else. Anybody who tells you that it is kind of different out there, or doesn't use common sense language, or can't tell you like they would tell a 5-year-old, then I would be suspicious, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see if there be. Let me see here. Shout out to Doug in the building. BW Chambers in the building. Thank you guys very much. We're going to go into some techniques now, because I think I'm confident that we have the landscape. I'm confident that we have the understanding of the rubric, understanding of the framework, the lens and the prism through which we're looking at all of this, which is just a very simple capacity development, use it or lose it lens, because that's reality, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go. And the first one we're going to talk about is, I forget what it's called. Okay. So this is not some kind of a formal, when I say formal, I mean, I'm not going to be using terms and talking about categories. Obviously, we're talking at a very basic level. We're talking about the capacities in everyday, normal, shall we say, quasi scientific language, the kind of language with which I would tell you about how to bake a cake, right? If I'm telling you about how to bake a cake and I start telling you about chakras, you're going to, you're right. So chakras are a perfectly fine word, but I believe they're Sanskrit, and you don't speak that language and you don't live in that context, right? So to think don't just throw ancient words in your cake recipe, right? No, the universe didn't change. It's just contexts change. So if I'm going to tell you about meditation, if anybody's going to tell you about meditation, you should listen to them and they should be able to tell you like it was baking bread without any weirdness coming up, right? So if you were hoping for some weirdness, no, there is no weirdness. The beauty and the weirdness isn't having the capacity. The beauty and the weirdness is in mastering your concentration, your sensory clarity, your equanimity, applying it to the feelings, the image, and the talk. You know, that's where the juice is. But really, what it is you're doing, formal use of a capacity. When you formally use a capacity, you develop it. Simple. Huh? All right. So let's talk about some formal uses here. This very first one we're going to talk about is it's not my favorite, but breathing, I would tell you, is my go to. Okay. I don't have the real names. This is your inhale, hold, and then exhale, and you're counting. Okay. So you breathe in like 1, 2, 3, 4 in. You hold 1, 2, 3, 4. You exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe some people call it square breathing. Okay. But recall, this is the form. So we start out with any exercise with the formality. The formality is you go in for a certain amount of time, you hold for a certain amount of time, and you come back same amount of time, right? Ideally, or it is said you should do the equal amounts of time. I tend to vary mine because I like to take very, very long, very deep breaths. But the point is this: when you inhale and you hold, what are you forced to do? You are forced to feel that pressure in your body. Let me get a one in the chat if you guys get what I'm saying. Okay. I asked you before to inhale, and I asked you again right now to just inhale. And this time we inhale and we hold it. We are forced to come to a certain equilibrium vis-a-vis atmospheric pressure trying to push down on our lungs and force that air out. Okay. We feel our body. We feel more muscles in our body, right? So you breathe deep, fill up the lungs, and then you hold it and you stop. Go. And you hold. In that holding, now you also see why the poise and the posture is key, right? Poise and posture is key to all this. And you're forced to feel. And you're now practicing concentration using the form, the breathing, the counting, especially. Okay. Concentrating. And then you practice the equanimity because you have to, equanimity meaning relaxation, the floating, the being cool, calm, and collected, that term, right? The treading water term. That particular capacity is what you need in order to hold that breath. You're practicing using the sensations in your body as a medium, how to be calm, because you have to be calm to hold the breath. So C and E. So C is concentration, E is equanimity, right? So I just put it there and put it in red that because C, E, and S, which is sensory clarity, and fit, feeling, image, and talk, we should just put those in the memory banks, whether I'm talking about closing a deal or I'm talking about starting a business or how to work 18-hour days and be a maniac. These things all come up, obviously, as for anyone who has watched some of the content, sees. So you breathe in, you hold. You're now practicing concentration, you know. You're also practicing on that tension in the body, right? There are feelings, okay, in the body that are released when you, especially when you breathe out. So beyond the simple holding of the breath, okay? So we breathe in, we hold, and then we relax. And you relax and you allow the body to settle all the way down. You're going to feel from the tension of the holding of the breath down to the relaxation. This is going to increase your sensory clarity. If you do this, what I just said, a simple thing, breathe in, hold, and then exhale. If you do that 20 times, you will feel things in your body that you were not feeling before you started doing that. Let me get a one in the chat. Let me get a one in the chat if this is clear. Not only are you exercising concentration and relaxation, you also start getting more sensory clarity. You're going to start discerning things in your body you were not able to discern. You're going to be feeling things you were not able to feel. You can try it right now. Or maybe you have already noticed, given the 3 or 4 breaths we have taken together here, using this particular mode. You will feel, you'll be able to discern and discriminate more closely. Now, obviously, if this is your first time ever doing any of this kind of stuff, then, you know, it may not immediately come to you as to what the benefit or, oh, I see how that works or how that will help, right? However, this is the mechanism. You're formally using the capacity and the landscape of feeling, image, and talk, okay? What is meditation? Developing concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity using the medium of our senses, our sensations, the image in our head, and the talk in our head. Okay? That whole other world in there, which is perhaps more important than the world out there, right? We think a lot, worry a lot about how to get a hold of the world out there, right? But the world within, the world within, that's where these capacities count, and that's what this gig is about. Okay? So there's the S, the sensory clarity, which you feel in the feelings. All right? You inhale, counting up to 6, up to 8 if you like, and then you hold. You feel the tension. You're using concentration and equanimity. You relax, and you're able to more clearly discern what your body is doing. That's why everybody says, take a deep breath, because when you take that breath, you're going to realize there was this train, which was you, that was moving down this direction, and you did not even know it was going there. That's the definition of unconsciousness. In other words, what we're trying to fight against. Okay, let me describe to you what the enemy is. Okay, this is our devil, our Satan over here. The devil is that moment before somebody tells you to take a deep breath. Okay, I hope I'm being clear here. That moment before someone tells you to take a deep breath, there's this whole freight train going down, and you're about to shoot someone in the head at the Vaughn's parking lot. And then they say, take a deep breath, and you take a deep breath. And then you notice that there was this whole freight train of whirlwind of activity going on that you are not even quite aware of. Well, you did not know how to separate yourself from. That is what I call unconsciousness, and unconsciousness is always the enemy. Consciousness is when you then go and you notice the freight train of feelings in the body, sensations in the body, images in the head telling you why you should blow their head off. This is a basic one, a very simple formal one that anybody can do. Easy for when you're laying down. And when you lay down, by the way, because we mentioned that formality is key, posture is key. Okay. Sitting is best in terms of spine straight. The best position is that, lotus position. Any close approximation of that you can get, the better. Sit on a straight back chair like this, spine straight, shoulders back, the whole deal, better. If you're going to lay down, lay on your back. Don't cross your feet, your legs at the heel. You're going to lay down and you're going to try to do this, and you're going to notice that your legs are crossed at the heel, right? Down there, your feet. You'll learn something about that down the line when you start paying attention to your body. You're going to learn certain things you did not even know were part of your little unconsciousness play, right? So uncross the feet, and then you can easily just count while you're listening to someone being told they're average at best or something. You breathe in, you 1, 2, 3, 4, and listen to the men's and the women's, and you breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, right? It's an easy entry point with the full understanding that you need to keep it going, that formalism, right? And when you get thrown off the track, which may or may not happen, well, which does happen, right? When you get thrown off the track, in other words, when you find yourself, oh crap, I forgot, I drifted off, right? You simply bring yourself back to the formalism. And that's why formalism is important, right? That way you know when you're actually working out versus when you're just zoning out, right? You're working out when you're following the form. If you're no longer following the form, now you're just sitting there talking about being average at best. Ladies and gentlemen. So that's your square breathing, I believe it's called, or inhale, count, hold, count, exhale, count. All right. We've talked about how you're utilizing that sense of equanimity and utilizing sensory clarity and also utilizing concentration by simply doing that form. Okay. Yes, sirree. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Leg crossing is still activity. Yes. Tell them, Wayman Brown. Tell them. I'm telling you, people, this is one of the biggest open secrets out there. In other words, you being able to master yourself. This crazy machine that is out here doing stuff that has very complex weather patterns going on. And then in the user interface, okay, on the desktop, you have images, all these senses and all this stuff, but you also have internal ones. Okay, not only are you seeing things out there, you're seeing things in your head, and you're hearing things in your head, and you're feeling things out there, but you're also feeling things in here. You can't ignore it. Ignoring it is chaos. Ignoring it is what ruins your life. Ignoring it is why you're a loser. Makes sense, right? It's kind of like it should be more clearly understood, And I think that if we understand this realm, that it does exist, it's not like I'm talking about anything kind of crazy or foreign. Just if we more clearly understood the ramifications of letting this thing go away, die away, atrophy, if we more readily understand that all the stress, the chronic stress and the cancer, the tiredness, the unhappiness, the inefficiency, the just general lack of zest for life and BS that you're stewing in mostly has to do with the fact that you don't know what's going on. You don't know how to understand that crazy freight train that is just happening around you. The crazy freight train called feeling in the body, image in the head, talk in the head. In other words, your subjective consciousness, that thing which you call yourself. Shout out to Cassandra B in the house and Dr. Thunder in the house. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Thunder and I monthly coming to a YouTube app near you, the Thunder. Yes, it's true. Last week of every month, starting this month. So we went through our first formal exercise. It's breathe, hold, breathe out. Inhale, hold, exhale. We talked about how we are formally using the capacities in the space of the body, using this breathing pattern as a access point. All right. Simple stuff. You can explain it to your kid. What are we doing? We're exercising our ability to watch our body. How do you exercise your ability to watch your body? The same way you exercise anything else. You do it. Oh, I thought it was something kind of weird and you had to say these weird words and you have to kind of, you know, walk bare feet and not use deodorant. Being a little facetious, having a little bit of fun. My hippie friends know I love them. Ladies and gentlemen, and Wayman Brown. Wayman Brown's out there dropping it. He says, oxygenate your body through breathing techniques in the morning. Exactly. We're going to talk about certain one. And check out this guy called Wim Hof. Just type Wim Hof. But point is, get on the ground floor first. Wim Hof is next level stuff. Wim Hof is like, oh, let's go watch some bodybuilders, but we don't even know the right form of lifting anything, right? No, let's go start lifting first, right? And then you can go check out the OG grandmasters in this stuff. Wim Hof is this crazy breathing and cold guy, using cold and breathing again as access points of being able to train that thing. Okay, being able to deal with the cold, you will know it involves calmness, concentration, equanimity, and all those other kinds of things. But there are many powers and many layers to this stuff, ladies and gentlemen. But we will go to the next woosah, says Dr. Thunder. The next one, okay, this one is one of my favorite ones, okay? This one I simply will call relax and exhale. In other words, the work is in the breathing in. So I take a deep breath in, all the way full, and then I don't actually force the air out. I simply let go of the tension in the body and let the atmospheric pressure push against me, emptying out my lungs. There is, again, because what you're doing, and you can try this, right? In other words, take a very deep breath all the way to full, and rather than breathe it out, diaphragm movement, moving your head, no, don't move anything, just let go, and then watch the chest come down, the shoulders come down. Okay? So deep breath all the way up, and then watch the out breath happen, almost like you're watching someone else's chest come down, someone else's shoulder come down, someone else's diaphragm go back to a certain position, right? You're going to be exercising, obviously, your concentration here, because you're going to be focusing, okay, on fighting the urge to push the air out, okay? I mentioned that we're in this space of breathing using non-emotional internal sensations. What does that mean? What are you talking about? It's simple, like everything else here, right? It's simple, right? You feel stuff in your body. Some of them are emotions, right? But some of them are not. Like this urge to push the air out, which you fight against and try to relax against. That is not an emotion, but it is a medium by which we can practice our ability to concentrate, our ability to focus, our ability to have equanimity, right? So, using the breath, accessing the body, feelings in the body, in this particular case, with most breath work, it's non-emotional internal sensations we're dealing with. Okay. They're internal, but they're non-emotional. Okay. So you got to focus on the relaxation of the different sectors of your body, right? So the relax exhale is here is the added formalism that I put on top of it. Okay. And hopefully this is making sense / worthwhile and interpretation. Oh, I'm not going off into my own weird little world. Or maybe it's both. It's best when it's both. So basically, the added formalism that I put on this particular exercise is this. I divide my body left and right. Okay. So you got left and right. Okay. And then I have head, chest, lower abdomen area, and then feet. So now I have 8 sectors, if you will. So I got my left side and my right side. And then from top to down, I have 4 little chunks. Okay. 4 little chunks. And basically what I do is when I do that thing, which we all just did, where we take a deep breath in and then we simply just relax in order to let it out. Like we just drop the shoulder and just and let it come out at its own pace. Almost like you're watching someone else's shoulder, someone else's chest, someone else's everything come back into place. What I do is, okay, those 8 quadrants that we talked about, I focus on one quadrant, I do the in breath, and then I watch the relaxation of that quadrant. Because in every single aspect of your body, there will be relaxation occurring at that out breath. You watch the left side of your face, in the back of your ear, there are muscles there. You can feel those muscles if you clench your jaw, for example. Okay. When you talk, when you do all kinds of things, move your neck around. Okay. You'll feel those relax. From back of your ears also towards the front of your eye here, the muscles with which you control your eyes and so on and so forth. Those too relax. Little facial muscles, obviously, for doing your facial stuff here, for all your smiling and frowning. Those need to relax. Your nose, temple, right? All kinds of stuff going on there. So I focus on that part of the body, and then I go through all the 8 parts of the body in a circular or in whatever kind of counting patterned way, right? That's the formality. But the basic thing is a deep breath to the brim, and then you simply try not to breathe out. In other words, let the universe breathe you out. Okay? It's almost like you let the thing simply happen, because it will, right? Because atmospheric pressure, and you're just like a balloon. You fill up the balloon, and rather than squish the balloon, you let the balloon deflate by itself. In so doing, okay, and again with the added formalism of watching the relaxation, which inevitably occurs, which is part of what you're training, because that equanimity is about relaxation, okay, and you need to be relaxed in order to fight that urge, okay. So by watching the relaxation in all these different parts, you're going to then also increase your sensory clarity about all these different parts. You're going to realize that you have more tension muscles in your body than you realized, more little unconsciousness havens, little places where unconsciousness goes to hide. Shout out to Eddie Adheem in the house. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for keeping it classy in the chat, okay? And to the mods, whenever you're around, if there's any kind of misbehavior going on, as you guys know, I started this stuff in September 2020, only a few months in. So thank you for the growth so far. But everyone has been generally nice in the chat, and I've not been able to watch. But in the case that we get some crazy stuff going on, please let's keep it at our level. All right. So don't hesitate to get rid of people because they're not wanted here. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're talking about meditation, but we're not hippies. Yes, 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 yes. No shoes, no shirt, no service. And if you act a fool, you can get the hell out. So the next one that I use, okay, and breathing, by the way, is my favorite access point because I have, again, it's like some people are just natural swimmers, some people are natural runners, some people are good at cycling, so on and so forth. Okay. You're going to find that you have certain things that you're just better at accessing than others. So being able to work with the body and move my attention around the body and feel it and do all that, and also work with the breathing, deep breathing, holding my breath, doing crazy breathing type stuff, I just have a natural aptitude for. I have a natural aptitude for that. And you will find that one of these things you'll be into. Breathing may just be your thing. Or when we get to the eyes, using your eyes, that may be your thing. When you get to using the ears, that'll be your thing. Okay. Imagine you have this whole smorgasbord, as they would say, your whole body. Okay. It's internal sensations, external perceptions, and then also you have the mind, images in the head and talk in the head. It's all fodder, it's all media for practicing this formal use of concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity, which we tend to call meditation, and getting better in that whole realm of your internal world. Because if it's chaos in there, it's always chaos outside, right? And even when it's chaos outside, if you have the ability to be equanimous, or have equanimity, so it's a question of priorities. I think that the internal should take priority. But this is coming from someone who's deeply introverted and also has this thing, like as I said, ever since I was a kid, I always liked doing certain things in my head that I later on now realize, oh, those are meditation techniques. So I've been living in my head a long time. So it's easy for me to come out and say, hey, you should prioritize your internal controls. You know, you need to dust up the dashboard, understand the gauges, make sure you know how it works, that kind of a thing. I think it's still true, but I like to mention this just for being completely honest, because it's always important to know where each individual is coming from. Okay, where I'm coming from is I don't think that it's like I have to do this kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff I naturally just do, right? So but I know not everyone is like that. Okay. And I'm out here kind of laying out the landscape of all the different options that you have. And today we're just talking about breathing, right? Breathing within the landscape of using sensations in the body. That's what the breathing exercises are about. Okay. And we're using non emotional internal sensations, and we're using modalities and countings and forms of breathing, right? So, but since I'm in a landscape where I'm like, oh, this is something I just naturally do, and I would just be doing it regardless. But I look out in the world and I see that generally speaking, it's not something people do. So I'm like, well, let me try to spread it all out and put it all out on the table in a certain way where at least, even if you don't do it, you know, right? You know exactly what you're not doing. And you could easily pick it up and begin at any point, right? Yeah. All you INTJ, INTP, serial killer types. You know that's what you are, right? I mean, we're all, yeah, probably just messed up the whole algorithm by mentioning serial killers. But my video on using her imagination, by the way, as far as the algorithm goes, it seems to be doing well, and it seems like whatever experiments so far, I still need more data, but the experiments are bearing fruit in that particular regard. So, shout out, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do a quick broad sweep recap, and then we're going to the next thing. Okay. Broad sweep recap is going to be taken up in 3 sentences. The first sentence is, if I can make this up as I go, that we're going to formally use capacities, concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity within the landscape of feelings in the body. Okay. Breathing is the access point with which we access this landscape of feelings in the body. Specifically, in this case, right, we're looking at non emotional internal sensations, such as that urge to force the air out. That's not an emotion, right? There are many, 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 even some things such as, let's say, instincts and intuitions. Okay, there's a rich world of non emotional internal sensations, right? There's some basic ones, just like, your stomach hurts. Those are non-emotional internal sensations as well. But all the internal stresses, tensions, blah, 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 plus some that are more formulaic, such as, by formulaic, I mean more patterned, such as intuitions and instincts, or like that breathe in and hold and then try not to breathe out, try to fight that urge to breathe out. That urge, okay, that is a non-emotional internal sensation. And I'm using that urge as a resistance. I'm training, okay, that is my resistance. That's my weight. Okay. That is the thing that we're pushing up against. You're going in there, finding out the mechanisms in terms of internal sensations in this case, the mechanisms of your subjective consciousness, the things that you're feeling in there, and you are opposing against them your concentration, your equanimity, your sensory clarity, this observation complex or mastery complex. You're imposing it upon these things. They are the weight, they are the resistance, right? So, I said it was going to take 3 sentences. I think that was more than 3 sentences, right? But and we talked about the kind of exercise that the pattern breathing, inhale, hold, exhale, count, right? And then we talked about the relax and exhale. This is my favorite kind, okay? Because it's very easy. You can do it laid down as well, and you just divide yourself up into these different places, and you're going to realize You have more places where you store tension, where you have little look. And here's one thing: when I need to mention quite clearly with sensations in the body type stuff, numbness is a category of sensation. Okay, so if you breathe in, you hold, you breathe out, and all you're feeling is numbness, that's something. And that is it's a very important tell, by the way. Numbness is like a loud ringing in the ear as well, in terms of like states. Okay. You can already see the one big advantage of being able to have sensory clarity such that you can identify the various arrangements of numbness, right? And how it sometimes combines with how your ear sounds that day, and on and on and on, just makes you better at navigating this meat machine, right? The relax and exhale is followed by the effortless inhale. This is my next best one. Okay. This is my next best or favorite, I should say, exercise. Red sings the blues. Not being able to keep videos up. Indeed. So, sup, Kane in the house. So, the next one is the effortless inhale. We already described the effortless exhale. The effortless inhale is just the reverse, okay? And it does very, very different things, okay? You feel very, very different things. The urge to inhale air actively is very different from the urge to exhale. And that urge is a key aspect of what we're gaming. That's what we're hacking. We're hacking that urge, okay? uh. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, all this stuff also makes you better in bed, obviously. So I need to just mention that as well as we go on, because it's an obvious fact, but mastering yourself makes you better at just about everything, especially the fun stuff. So there is the effortless inhale, where you empty out the lungs, breathe all the way out, and you allow the inhale to happen, the air to come in with the least amount of effort you can possibly enact. So, your equanimity, your ability to stay calm and controlled and observe, is fighting against the urge to fill up your lungs. So you can take a deep breath, empty out your lungs, and then try not to breathe in, but let the breathing in happen of its own accord. And that's why poise and posture, as I mentioned earlier, is key. The using of the relaxation and the equanimity part against the urge to inhale is rather clear. the feeling of the sensations that you will be feeling as you experience this will go towards the sensory clarity aspect of this whole trifecta, the trifecta of sensory clarity, concentration, and equanimity, which are the capacities that we're developing. This one I also find, just like the previous one, very easy to, it's a good beginner one. Plus, but I always have to mention the caveat that maybe it's because I'm a body kind of person, right? I That's my thing. But that body though, word them up, word them up, word them up, word them up, word them up. Oh, the suit. Yeah, it doesn't get too cold out here too often in California, but when it does, you get the chance to bring out some of your heavier coats, some of those more patterned. So basically, this is a simple one to try, guys. Okay. If breathing at all, or if the body at all is a good access point for you, because remember, we still got a whole bunch of other sensations in terms of perceptions and other internal sensations, and also the use of emotions, but also the use of images in the head and talk in the head. These things are all media, all fodder for practicing concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity. Getting better at that. And we're getting better at using these things within the domain which we want to use them. And we want to use them in the domain of our internal subjective consciousness, our images in our head, the talk in our head, the feelings in our body. Because we can miraculously create an observer in there that has some kind of separation, and that can watch the weather patterns, that can watch that unconscious train that was trying to lead you to do something stupid before you did that. Word them up, 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 word them up. um, some comments in the chat. So Kane over here sounds like a smarty pants type of guy. uh the negative meditation. I would like to hear that. And by the way, I'm also going to open up the panel for anyone who wishes to make a comment, ask a question. Okay. As we move on to the next technique, ladies and gentlemen. So the effortless the effortless inhale, having to do with the relaxation and the fighting of that urge. Okay. This could take you to circular breathing as well. Okay. Circular breathing, all kinds of okay, now, as I mentioned before, when I also mentioned, also look at Wim Hof, WIM and HOFF, I believe, or maybe HOF. That's grandmaster level stuff. Okay. But start. Okay. By the time I get into the circular breath, at that point, it's just kind of like intellectual masturbation at that point, because it's like, well, when you'll figure that one out by yourself. Okay. But circular breathing, and then over here I have cold shower. We'll talk about that in a second. But Who do we have in the house?
Hey, how are you doing?
What's up, Kaizo? How are you?
Uh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, what do you have for us on this topic? Is meditation your bag or not your thing?
This is an interesting one. I guess I'm not really into traditional forms of meditation,
Mm.
but I do have a meditation form that I utilize to help deal with things.
When you say meditation form, what do you mean?
Right. So I engage periodically with negative meditation.
Explain.
Right. So with negative meditation, what I usually do is I try to envision as much possible negative things that could exist uh, within a certain period of time, and then I try to actually experience it. So that would mean I would experience pain, anguish, turmoil, anything that is anything that the usual average human being would find, you know, unable to actually deal with it. Once I do that, what happens is when the thing actually happens in reality, I'm already prepared, so it's actually ineffective. Right.
Okay, so why do you refer to that as negative meditation? Okay, because when you say negative, I thought you were coming
Mhm.
from meta crazy level or some crazy shit that you PhDs do. But thankfully, you kept it to the level that I could understand.
Oh, okay, you can't, you're one of the highest level abstractors I've seen. So I think, yeah, I think you can understand usually what I say. But
But let me just kind of commiserate with what you're saying, generally speaking, because so as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, this kind of thing is kind of my thing. I noticed that I was doing some meditation techniques um, when I was a kid, just something that I used to do when I was a kid, right? And then later on, when I got into meditation, around 18 years old, and so on and so forth, years down the line, I started realizing, oh, that thing I used to like to do. Okay, so given that I like to do that, and I also like to systematize things and so on and so forth, I'm kind of laying out the options here.
mm,
And the thing you mentioned will be within the realm of, and when we get into, because right now we're using breathing to access feelings in the body,
mhm,
specifically
right.
non-emotional internal sensations. When we get to the part of of the mind, or also using internal emotional sensations, obviously, yes, then we have ways to trigger them, to bring them up. Just like I said, I'm trying, I'm inducing this urge to inhale, right? And I'm fighting against that urge, right? So that's inducing some kind of perturbation. So 100%, what you're saying, right? You want to imagine, oh yeah. So
Right.
yeah, I'm totally down with that. I like that one as well. And let me see, who else do we have in the house? Could you please introduce yourself? Uh, you may be muted, or sir. All right, you may have to figure out your sound and then try to come back or chime in when you have that figured out. Okay. So let me ask you this. How did you happen upon this? Because the reason I ask, it is one thing to just have a form, like you said, but being able to actually utilize it, in other words, having sensitive enough instruments to be like, oh, I'm experiencing this, so I'm desensitizing myself to it. And in other words, having that kind of understanding that, oh, this is actually of use and this is not just some weird kinky thing I like to do.
Mm.
And you're saying that, but meditation is not really your thing. Like that's kind of weird to me. It's like like, no, dude, you're deep in it. So how did you encounter this negative meditation technique of yours?
Right. Okay. I guess okay. I guess for me the issue is formalisms. So for example, when I used to do martial arts, it was the kind of copying the specific movements like the katas in the Japanese karate that I had a problem with. I could find use with the katas, but the exactness of the katas is kind of what put me off a little bit. Same thing with meditation. Like I do have techniques that I use for meditation, of course, breathing techniques, silent techniques, as well as sitting techniques. But I guess my problem is I've always struggled to copy the specific techniques from the script. So I guess that's what I mean. So I do it, but I have that I guess issue copying the technique. For some reason, my mind or body always finds its own way to do things.
That is very interesting, because I too have that kind of an issue. So I mentioned earlier that I found out I was doing some meditation crap, right? This is also also a habit of mine, that this is what I do. Like, for example, circular breathing and certain things that Wim Hof does, which I'll mention next, for example, like the cold shower type stuff. These are things that I find out, and then I come back and I go check the literature, if you will.
Right.
And then I see certain things and I'm like, oh, so that thing I've noticed out there in the jungle has a name. Someone else noticed it. So yeah, I am 100% that way, in the sense that I like to go in, right? So if I see a library that says, hey, there's this thing called meditation, and it's about, these are the first 2 steps, but it's a 10,000 step journey. I look at the 2 steps, try to get what they're trying to get, and I go do it by myself. And I always then come back to check that library and be like, oh, check, to at least to make sure I wasn't just completely crazy, or to also, we need some kind of validation, right? We always to be like, okay, someone else, or commiseration, like, oh, you got it too. Oh, you bastard. This is how you would describe it. That kind of a thing. So, sir, who art thou?
Who art thou?
Yeah, so we have somebody else in here. Can you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, Ike, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Hey, Ike, how's it going, man? Yeah, my name is Sebastian, and I'm 37, law graduate, and I've come to a pivotal time in my life. Perhaps you'd call it maybe some sort of midlife crisis kind of thing. And I'm trying to discover myself. I feel like I haven't properly figured out who I am and how to fully function in the real world when it comes to meditation and forms of decompressing stress. I'm in a very stressful, competitive industry. And at this point, I'm taking a break because I'm trying to mediate, how to deal with my stress, how to deal with other things such as therapy, etc. So what would you suggest for somebody who is brand new into meditating, and somebody perhaps with a kind of ADHD background? Because sometimes I find it's very difficult, especially when I have like a thousand things swirling in my head, what to kind of like just gather my thoughts, take a moment to just not think of anything, be in silence, and gather myself.
So I would have to ask, the crisis you mentioned, the knowing of oneself, which is absent. What does that feel like?
I feel like a flower that's trying to bloom, but I only have 2 inches to bloom, and there's a glass ceiling over my head. And
I see.
it's just like I need to figure out how to break through this obstruction in my life and just kind of be able to focus.
Got it. So it's still quite abstract. Well, it's not like, well, you know what, I ended up at the homeless shelter and I got needles coming out of my arms. And, right?
No, not at all like that. No.
Okay. 'Cause it's a different kind of. So when it comes to, and Kaizo, let me ask you this: Do
Right.
you, when the ADHD that was described, is that something that you have experience with?
Yep. I used to have ADHD. My friend also used to have ADHD. I struggled with just focus. I struggled to be able to sit down and be able to kind of do a linear logical simulations or iterations. So that's something that I did have. However, what I did start to do is, I don't want to say meditation helped, but I think when I started to kind of sit down, focus, and try to eliminate all distractions, I was able to actually now move forward. Like ADHD became a distraction actually in on itself. So since I started my degree, it disappeared. I no longer had that as a impediment.
Okay, so I had a feeling, and that's why I asked.
Right.
And for me, I don't know that that's my thing per se, or that's I don't know that distraction is a big deal for me. But so I wanted to ask you first. So, sir, there are many access points, and that is the main message of this in this series here on how to meditate, is that there are many access points to try to get a hold of something. Because if you are trying to not think about elephants, you know that's not possible. Right? If I tell you, don't think of an elephant, right? Don't think of a pink elephant riding a bicycle, right? So you know that doesn't work. So, however, you may be someone that can listen to your ear, either just the innate ringing of your ear, or there's something that you can turn on that has a form to it, because there has to be some struggle. Okay, it's in other words, there's no, oh, here's the pill, right? And there's probably a pill for it. There's probably all kinds of pills, right? But that's not what we're talking about, right? So there's going to be some, but the doesn't have to be, oh, let me sit down and stop my brain from going 1,000 places, because that's just one access point. Okay, as we just said, there is the breathing access point. You could literally be like, okay, at least I can count. Okay, I can breathe and count. Now, why are you breathing and counting? You're breathing and counting to develop these capacities, which can help you also in these other dimensions. Capacities being concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity. But the same concentration that you need to focus your head is the same that you can get by focusing on a feeling. By me fighting the urge to exhale. It's the same capacity, right? So, well, so far, does that make sense at least?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, having said that, there's also the images in the head, which is probably not the good one for you to start with, because that's where the chaos is.
Right.
Yeah. And then there's talk in the head, maybe too close, right? But then the whole feeling aspect, in terms of right now, we're just in the non-emotional internal sensations, and using the breathing as an access will be a great place to start. Maybe that's why I started there. Maybe it's because my head is full of crap all the time, right? But for me, I can be like, okay, I can do a formal sitting with myself. I can try, and I can clench my teeth and struggle, and the next day I'll get better at it, and I'll start to get certain rewards. When you start developing this stuff, it's like anything else. It's like getting runner's high or something. When you notice, oh, wow, I'm able to feel things in the left side of my body now that I was not able to feel 2 minutes ago as a result of me breathing, relaxing, and watching how the left side of my chest falls, and then watch how the right side of my chest falls, and then the left side, and then the right side, and then the left side, and the right side. And next thing you know, you're a little more alert, and so on and so forth. And it is a long road. So, number one, many things to choose from. This is the second part in a series that's probably going to be like 10 parts, because we're going to have to explore the body and the mind access points and all the different ways, modalities, and so on and so forth. So that's number one, many access points. Okay. Number two is it's a long road, right? And number three is just same thing as number one, which is that the fact that there are many access points should not discourage you from the thing that, or for the truth, that you're developing a capacity that cuts across many different activities. Whether you're a sniper or you're free throwing or you're trying to solve mathematical equations, concentration is concentration.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's wow. I mean, sometimes like when you look into things, understanding simplicity in that thing is the hardest, and it's yeah, this has been a very enlightening call for me. I really appreciate you breaking that down. I completely understand now, and I'm gonna experiment that tonight.
Oh, that's great. You're over here making my day.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So thank you very much. I will go ahead and drop you off and try to bring in the other caller that
Cheers, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. And yeah, stick around. And next time in one of next part of the series, probably would like to hear how it went.
Thank you.
Can you say something, sir?
Hello, how are you?
I am fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing amazing.
What you got for us?
Oh, nothing. I just was trying to learn. It's funny the things that you guys are talking about. Well, it's not funny. It's actually informative.
Good. So I would like to move on now to this cold shower thing. And
Right.
this is Wim Hof. You saw that on the slide and you're like, what? Or do you have experience with the cold shower thing?
Yeah. Actually, there was a time when I was trying to save on the bills on the electricity. So the cold shower, actually, that's how I started with it. Then I read deeper into it. So what happened with my body specifically is it actually got me into fasting as well. So we can discuss that at a different time. But the cold shower, what happened is it actually activated my body. So I was groggy, waking up very tired, very unwilling to actually get up. But with the cold shower, I was able to basically recalibrate my whole body system. So the moment the water touched my head to the bottom of my foot, what happened actually is I reached equilibrium. So the sensation moved across my whole body. I was able to reinstate myself, and also it woke me up as in not just like a tiredness, but also my brain. I was a lot more alert, yet I was still focused. So what I realized is when I started taking cold shower while meditating, I was able to get visions. Right. I'll give an example. So during my final 2 months of my PhD, I needed to come up with a solution to one of my problems. And there's no problem to the solution. So when I took a cold shower and I also meditated at the same time, what happened is I got small visions that actually happened, that if I took them on board, I would also have another dream in a similar time frame, like a week later, and the answers would just come to me. So I was having like a body as well as a mind awakening at the same time. And that's how I was able to do my final chapter.
Brilliant. That is very nice, because I also had a similar experience. I mean, this was in my master's, and I was doing visualizations at the time, certain visualization exercises, and there was a marked difference between my ability to do certain things in my head before I started doing that, and then towards the end of the test. Matrix algebra, all these dimensions, and being the kind of person I am, I'm not very good with symbols and stuff. I gotta have some kind of intuition and then build from there. So I had to do a lot of visualization of all these planes and crap. So it really did help me also. So, but the cold shower thing, okay? And for everyone listening, yes, cold shower, and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. But there is a whole, and the reason why it's in the breathing section of this stuff, okay? And it is a heavy induction of some kind of, or inducement of some kind of perturbation, a la what Mr. Kaiser was talking about earlier about, negative meditation, right? Cold shower is definitely some kind of a little bit of a torture, right? But what I do, okay, is you'll find that you can do, and there's a breathing technique, right? This in your effortless inhale, or it's circular breathing, okay? When you're at the point where you can do circular breathing, where it's almost like you're inhaling the whole time. Check. Yes, sir, Dr. Thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I wouldn't. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. That sure SM, whatever it is working just fine. So the taking in of a deep breath for a very long time. Okay. Now, I haven't gone back to the library on this one and looked at the book and see exactly what's going on. But this is something that when you do these kinds of things, and I've also seen some videos to show that, I'm not the only one, right? Mm-hmm. You can be in a state where it seems like you're breathing in for like 5 minutes.
Right.
And that's not possible. You're also breathing out a little bit. I'm kind of sensing that. I don't know exactly how it's working, okay? But when I want to, I turn on the cold shower and I do that thing, and it's almost like a double boost, okay? Because the cold shower is trying to, it almost like boosts up that, it's trying to pull me into this cowering position or whatever. And that deep breath thing is trying to enlarge me almost. Like, so every time I come out of the shower, it's crazy. It's like, so yeah, this is my move. And for the explosive therapy down there written, I don't know what that's about, but yes, as I mentioned earlier, when you get better at something like this, obviously it makes you better at everything else, including other things that you might imagine. So, Dr. Thunder, what you got for us?
Again, with the very stimulating conversation, very interesting topics. So the negative meditation thing is interesting because I find many similarities between that and strategies to overcome performance anxiety. Okay. So, I mean, as you know, I teach for a living, and I teach music. And so I have a lot of students that have to do things like juries, or they have to play for studio classes, and studio classes are filled with, people that all do the same thing that you can do, and have played a lot of the same pieces of music that you've played. So they understand what the problems are going to be, and it's very easy for them to detect if you have spent the adequate time preparing. They have such an intimate knowledge of what's going on that that's not the place that you can half step, right? And so, sort of playing for your peers in that way can be quite nerve-wracking. Playing for juries, you have a panel of professors that every time you play a note, every time you start the next selection, every time anything happens, you hear some scratching on a piece of paper, they're notating and they're documenting everything that you're doing, making some kind of comment. And you realize that, in order for me to stay on course, for me to, get out of this, I got to get a level change, right? I got to pass out of this level. So it's nerve-wracking. performances, when you're in college, rehearsals, if all of that stuff can be stressful. It can be, it can be a lot of anxiety associated with it. But there's sort of like this negative sort of meditative thing that's going on, to use the term that was used before, where you're sort of desensitizing yourself, or you're making yourself aware of what your response is going to be, so that you can devise strategies to deal with what those responses are.
Right.
So that's a very interesting way to put that. And when you mentioned that, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what that is. Same sort of idea. I don't know if you guys saw the news or whatever. This has been, I've seen a couple red pill content creators post this even, but Dr. Dre is in the hospital right now. And he's in the hospital because he has a brain aneurysm. Right.
Damn.
So now we know that he's going through the divorce. Right.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me that these kinds of topics, especially with, equanimity, being able to be balanced even when the world is falling apart and your world is falling apart and all kinds of stuff is hurling around. It's very important. It's especially important for Black men because of the kinds of situations that we're likely going to find ourselves in, if we do everything right or not. Not having a good sort of control of these meditative practices can actually put you in the hospital. I'm not suggesting that, this is a correlation, not a necessarily evidential. It's not a proper evidentiary chain. I'm not trying to make I'm not saying that, if Dr. Dre had been watching Ike, then he wouldn't be in the hospital now. But what I am saying is that I think these topics, especially the meditative topics, are very, very important. Not just something to think about, not just, an interesting conversation, but stuff that I think, more of us need to walk out. I'll just say a couple more really brief things, and then I'm gonna drop back down. But I felt like that was just like the right thing to bring up in this context. One of the things was, I'm in my second marriage, and so I've been divorced before, and it's not a good experience, even in the case of with where there were no kids involved. And where there wasn't really any squabbling over material possession, she just took everything. Wasn't really any squabbling over that. I didn't realize how I saw it as it was a bad situation. I saw it as a blessing that she left. But I didn't realize how stressed I was actually about it. And I got to the point where I was starting to have these pretty intense physical manifestations. I didn't know what was going on. My blood pressure was off the charts. I've up until that point, a regular blood pressure for me would be like 112 over like a low 60s number or something.
Right.
And, I went in to get it checked. It was like 190 over, 90 or something. It was just crazy numbers for me.
Sorry about that.
And to this day, my blood pressure has not gone back down to the 112 over 60. I mean, it's still good. It's still like 120 over 70 or something. But something physical actually took place. It's not just we're not just talking about stuff that just is happening in the mind. We're talking about stuff that is actually affecting the body. Wow. Yeah, I think that's enough. So anyhow, fascinating conversation, gentlemen.
Yeah, talking about abuse and that word that likes to be thrown around a lot, right? Abuse, right? Yeah.
I will say this. This is, we're at least red pill friendly, right? So you won't mind me saying yeah, I got pretty drug in that situation because on a Sunday she told me she was leaving and she was gone on Wednesday, and I'm talking the following Wednesday, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, gone, like that. And within 2 weeks, she got knocked up by some dude in another city. Right. So she took a job. She had applied for a job weeks before, she had told me. She got the job, then moved to, I'm talking at least 8 hours away, 3 states away. Right. And gets knocked up in like a couple weeks after being there.
Can I ask you a question?
There you go. Go ahead. Sorry.
Prior to your first marriage, were you had you removed yourself from the blue pill matrix, or were you ingrained with it?
I was firmly in the blue pill camp. Sorry to say, it wasn't until I was after that situation, and honestly, a couple more situations that I gained the ability to be able to actually like detach and walk away.
Right.
Because I always saw, I see that stuff as, I saw that as quitting.
Right.
And my parents are still together. They've been together 51 years.
Right.
Right. So I saw it as quitting, and I wasn't going to quit. And no matter how much abuse I was taking, didn't matter. I wasn't going to quit. And I got to the point finally where I saw that it's not just about not quitting. You also have to apply that principle to a person that can appreciate that.
Right.
And that was the part that I wasn't able to put together. And it seems like an obvious thing, but it's not as obvious. And, I'm 46. And so a lot of these mistakes I was making were sort of, or obviously outside of the benefit of communities like this one, communities like the Red Pill community that exists now on YouTube. That kind of conversation wasn't really, it wasn't permitted.
Right.
It just wasn't allowed. And men didn't really think about, I think men had a sense, we had a sense that something was wrong, but we didn't have the words, we didn't have the verbiage to communicate,
right.
those issues.
It wasn't systematized yet.
Right. But I am now. I'm aware now. I know what's going on now. better late than never.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. Like, from my experience, what I realized is that I don't want to get too meta. So EK, please stop me if I go too meta. But from my experience, what I realized is that the whole red pill awareness, it goes for both men and women. And the reason I say this is because I usually use negative meditation to envision any possible good and also so-called bad thing that could happen. So, and I also try to reach a 4-dimensional consciousness. So I'll explain what I mean by that is, I envision myself as a man, married with the children and a wife, and also like multiple different people that I marry with a woman, wife, child, etc. And I also envision myself as my wife with me and also with other people and children, and etc. So I try to envision everything from all possible perspectives and variations. And what I've come to understand is that it seems like trying to have a relationship itself is already difficult enough, because you're putting two souls to unite within a carnal universe which has temptations. So each individual from both sides, so both the man and woman, should be red pill aware, in the sense that, you know, the risks enacted by being a woman, for example, might be risks of potential domestic DM. I'm not going to say it in here, etc., and also other types of bad things might happen to her because she's the weaker vessel. Meanwhile, the man, obviously, there's also the aspect of the laws in most Western family court systems that is going to not benefit them. So I guess the issue here is each individual needs to be aware of the particulars that generally affect their gender or orientation, I guess, depending, and to understand that this is a risk associated with interacting with another human at such a level. And what I've realized is, with negative meditation, when I account for all these things, there is no pain or harm anymore. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily nihilism, because what I also get sometimes is people tell me, well, that's not a good way to live. Are you happy, etc.? No, I am happy, and I'm not nihilistic in the sense that I don't think that there's a point to it. I just understand that there is no absolute point to it. The points that are created by myself and those who I interact with. But yeah, it has kind of enriched me a lot more, and allows. And I would say, for example, those who suffer from PTSD, etc., from any kind of manner, and I would include war veterans, etc., if they had envisioned themselves doing all manners of evil, which it is what will happen in some cases, they wouldn't get the PTSD. It's usually when you are kind of slapped in the face with a reality that you can't accept. But if you had already kind of thought about it, it's much less likely for it to affect you the same way when it compared to when it kind of just hits you.
Gotcha.
It's
So
as if
you're
the
saying before and after. Go ahead.
It's as if the surprise of the event is sort of inflicting most of the trauma. If you can, well, the ripples, I suppose the ripples from the surprise, but if you can minimize how surprised you are by the event, then you can also minimize the rippling.
Right.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Right, exactly. And like you mentioned earlier about if, let's say, Dr. Dre had listened to Ike, it's possible that, you know, if he had listened to the meditation techniques or some of the preventative measures, he may have thought about just being okay with what's happening to him. Because the other issue is he had values in his monetary, materialistic. Because I guess, you know, from where he came from, materialistic achievement was something that actually was part of his ego, his sense of self. So the moment where he lost half of it, or more than that, I guess, since he's on the verge of losing his name as well, or part of his name, it's kind of caused him too much turmoil that he can't accept. But the negative meditation kind of allows you to just be okay with the fleeting nature of things, the fact that nothing can be maintained across time. Everything is always going towards entropy.
What's the importance or the place of art in this? Because while you guys say this, I just remember myself always liking to draw monsters and the darkest things from the pits of hell that I can imagine growing up. And my dad would always, it would disturb my dad for whatever reason. And I always thought, and I would literally think, now that I think about it, I almost want to use a certain word here. No disrespect to the old man, but he was kind of being a simp about my drawings. Let me put it that way. That was the exact kind of feeling. I was like,
right,
come on. So the point is, you said it's negative meditation, all this kind of stuff. You guys are high level, systematic kind of guys, but it seems to me that you could just be a blues musician, and that'll, you know, you're going to be expecting all kinds of pain and hurt, right? So what's the play? How does art play into this?
Do you mean, when you say art, do you mean visual art or auditory art?
I think he means something more general.
Yeah, more general. So it could be the blues, okay, or it could be me drawing the monsters and liking to think about the monsters, or just musing in general about the dark side, or liking dark poems or whatever, that kind of a thing.
Okay. Okay. So from my perspective, I do play blues. Actually, blues is the instrument that allows me to express my soul most accurately. So 6 strings on the guitar or on the piano, I can express my soul unencumbered, and it's such a, especially when I use the ninth chords and then I go down into the diminished systems. When I'm mixing it with the blues, it does allow me to express a certain emotion that I can't quite express verbally, because sometimes I might be too technical, too precise with terms that I'm not able to really feel the emotion in real time. So music itself kind of allows me to express that emotion that I can't express verbally. And when it comes to art, like a drawing, actually Audra's art somehow actually it is what inspires me. I mean, she can draw, she can actually turn a vision from her mind into an artistic expression. It's not surrealist artist and it's not abstract art. It's like a new, I don't know, I guess I call it abstraction, artistic interpretation. It's more like you have separate different artistic, really high level art that's drawn really well, but somehow enters a surrealism realm. I can't quite express it. I'll have to show you an example.
I feel you though.
Right. It's a vision that you kind of, yeah, right. You just express it onto a static framework, but it's can't be quite expressed. I believe in my case, the blues music and the art kind of allows me to kind of make sense of the world. So it means I can accept what's happening, because now at least I've got something like some kind of image that I can attach those monsters to.
Do you wish to share this with the world? And then I'll ask Dr. Thunder he's a musician and all that. But do you feel some kind of, now that you have this particular thing that helps you, it expresses certain things you cannot express otherwise in words and so on and so forth, you have the capacity, is there some kind of a responsibility to put the stuff out there? Does it actually help in terms of consumption of music, consumption of art, this cultural artifact out there, and helping people with their ability to expect the worst, if you will? So just direct question, yes or no, Kaiser. Do you want to put stuff out there, or yeah, you really don't care for the masses that much, do you?
Yes, I see. I know you asked me for yes or no. I'll keep it quick, but I like to trigger people, right? So that means I like to play as the cancer to people. What I mean by that is people sometimes need to be exposed to unsettling emotions in order to actually recognize their own emotions that are incomplete, so that they can actually reconcile with it. So sometimes I play the actor as devil's advocate, even in my music or art, to make almost force them into acknowledgement of their own emotions.
So, Dr. Thunder, does art help you, and also art for the masses, and you having any kind of responsibility as an artist?
Yeah, so this is I could talk a long time about this. I'm going to try to keep this short. But yeah, music has a power. It has this power to it can be quite meditative.
Right.
And so, my first instrument was saxophone. And so as a wind player, some of these breathing techniques that Ike is talking about are not just appropriate for, just breathing, but actually I think about them when I'm playing also. One of the things in particular, there's actually a technique called circular breathing, where a wind player can play an unending note or stream of notes. Often people will think about Kenny G or something, when they think about circular breathing. That's an unfortunate example. That's not the best example. Much better examples would be like Wynton Marsalis or um, 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 oh, why did I blank on his name? Wynton Marsalis, who plays Paganini's Perpetual Motion,
Right.
which is a piece written for violin, but he plays it on trumpet, and you can't even hear the same. You can't hear where he's taking the breaths at all, and it's just totally musical. I'll tell you a quick story. So I've played with Wynton. I know Wynton. I interviewed Wynton on my show, Conversations with Dr. Thunder. I first met him when I was in my 20s. It was a long time ago, early 20s. And I performed with him on a tune in particular called Cherokee. Now, Cherokee is one of these tunes where it's a rite of passage. It's a tune that's played very fast, 360. We must have been playing at least 360. And it has a long form, so it's fast and long. And Wynton has this thing that he does on that where he plays an unending stream of notes, circular breathing for like 4 courses straight, right? And then after he does that, then it's my turn to play, right? So, talk about negative meditation. But so anyhow, so I just think it's interesting that a lot of these terms they find themselves in different, maybe used slightly different, but some similarities in the way that they're used. But yeah, I mean, I think, I talk to my students all the time about how, if they're feeling stressed, if they're feeling anxiety, and a lot of college students are feeling a lot of that these days because of the pandemic. And, as a musician, the sort of separation from other musicians, music is quite a, it's a communal thing. It's a community thing. It's not intended to be done by yourself,
Right.
and especially jazz. Wynton said famously or infamously, don't call it jazz, it's social music. And so now that brings up a couple things. One thing is there's this idea, and it's like a new age kind of idea where you're supposed to seek pleasing yourself as the priority. So in art, the way that manifests itself is, it's all about, I'm playing, as long as I enjoy it, as long as I'm having a good time, that's what the most important thing is. You got to please yourself. You have to please yourself, right? And although I think it's important for you to enjoy, to have a good time and to enjoy the way that you sound, because if you can't enjoy the way that you sound, then how are you going to have confidence enough to project it in a way that it can come across to the audience in the way that you experience it, right? It's like that thing that happens like the first time you do an outgoing message on your phone, and then you listen back to it. It's like, oh, that's what I sound like, and then over time you start to become more comfortable with the way that your speaking voice and your pacing, the way that you sound, to the point where you don't necessarily even have to listen back to something. You already know what it sounds like because you're so familiar with hearing yourself back, right? So there are some benefits to that. The downside to that is that in something that is intended to be community building and culture building and communal and collective and social, you can't really prioritize yourself over the experience of the audience, over the communication and interplay between you and the other musicians and everything else. So, so there's a balancing act there, but all of those interactions, I think, can be tremendously therapeutic. They can teach you a lot about yourself, and they can be quite meditative. Quite meditative. This one of the streams before, we were talking about the sort of zone, getting in the zone and the space and stuff. And when you get into that theta state, that the brain activity at the theta state, I think that's quite actually therapeutic for your body. I think your body is necessarily relaxed to enable you to get there, right? So I think it also works the other way, so that if you're able to get there, then you know that it's having positive effects on your body, that your body is at least in a relaxed kind of state, at least where you're not sort of Mickey Mousing every movement. I'm sorry, I keep using all these terms. Mickey Mousing is a term that they used to use for film scoring for like cartoons, where the music follows every
climbing the steps,
movement.
like dope, 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 dope.
Yeah. And although that's really great for cartoons, if you're in a dramatic film, in a serious movie, a film score that Mickey Mouses is terrible, because it doesn't it's giving you too much information.
Right.
You want it to be more mysterious than that. So
it's interesting that you, at some point when you were talking, you mentioned the whole causation correlation thing in terms of the physical health, mental health, all kinds of health, and it being related to this meditative practice that we're talking about. And then you then went on to talk about, yes, I do believe it makes you better and you are more relaxed. And yes, I do. that is interesting that you went around in that circle there. Something you mentioned about modern music. I'm just calling it modern music now, because there's some modern movement and selfishness and let me just play whatever I want. Okay, so modern music, one aspect of it also has to do with shocking people, as opposed to, so shocking people might be therapeutic as well. But this is just me musing now about what you just said, because one of the things, because I have my, it's not just music, it's modern art, just like I'm talking about art in general. So Piss Christ, right? That's the one, everybody knows that example, right? But it's because it's a perfect example of the whole thing. It's like, okay, what's the point of that? What's kind of shocking? And a lot of people can do a lot of things like of that. There are many examples of that kind of thing. Let me do this kind of crazy. I've seen this really nicely painted, like almost Disney princess type paintings, but are kind of weirdly pornographic in a way, and they're also kind of they're shocking, but I find myself not liking it because I don't really like that kind of a modern thing. But there is that kind of a but the person might say, hey, but I'm helping them out, I'm shocking them, I'm putting stuff out there. But I'm not wondering, is there a difference between how a blues musician tells a sad tale versus someone just shocking you with some crap? But Kaizo, feel free to respond to what I just said and everything else Dr. Thunder said.
Right. See, in terms of shocking, there's different variables I could bring in. So I used to be part of a rap rock fusion band, right? So we used to, and this when I used to be African, we used to go play into different crowds, different areas, into metal bands, into the more hip hop bands, and we never fit in, but people used to get shocked by our music because it was so different, and this used to kind of elevate different emotional responses from different types of people. Now, at some points, we decided to get more hardcore, and we got into the point of metal, or not even metal, I guess hardcore. No, not hardcore, post-hardcore. So it's even more hardcore than normal hardcore. Post-hardcore metal band, right? And the music used to shock people, especially our parents and all the so-called Christian and religious aunties and uncles, etc., who were our main supporters at the time. Now, the thing is, it did actually help them focus more, and it actually expanded their knowledge on different types of music. So on one hand, we did shock them, and it did kind of create that awareness and acknowledgement. But at the same time, initially there was some kind of pain and struggle that they had to kind of overcome. In fact, they try to detract us and tell us, hey guys, you really shouldn't do this. This is demonic. This is anti-XXXXX. I try to show them my lyrics. The lyrics are perfectly anti-demonic, but still they had this association with demonic and so-called metal sounding music. So the shock factor there kind of helped to break down that whole preconception.
Okay, Mr. PhD, let me ask you this. And I mean Kaizo, the PhD, not Dr. Thunder, the other PhD.
All right, there's two of them here.
Yeah, we got them both live, ladies and gentlemen. So you just mentioned something about the devil's music. I have listened to some rational people talking about some kind of something primitive about certain rhythms, let's say.
Right.
You can take it all the way back to Plato, and he had all kinds of beef with poetry, if you will. Poetry meaning, the whole thing. And he wanted to do it this way, and these are not allowed, and the gods cannot cry, and you may not do this, and no, that blah, blah, blah. So do you give any credence to that whole world? Because I guess I started it out. I said, these modern artists, and they're trying to shock you, and that I don't necessarily like it. And then I listened to certain people, and then Plato says this, and that other person says devil's music. Where is the credence there? Because I just kind of assume there must be something to what they're saying, right?
Right. See. Okay. So, sorry. I'll go first, and then Dr. Thunder, you can go after. Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay. So when it comes to this, there's an element of hierarchies. So when Plato mentioned this, what he's talking about is the hierarchies ascertaining to the people in charge, and also the intellectuals who deem a certain kind of music as so-called good. I'll give you a perfect example on today's term. There is the conservative commentator. I forgot his name, but he's like what's his name? Anyways, I forgot his name, but he mentioned that rap music is not real music. Now, when he mentioned this, that rap music is not real music, he mentioned it because it lacks melody. Now, melody.
Dave Shapiro?
No, it's he's a.
I'm sorry, no, never mind. Go ahead.
No, but I should know his name. Conservative, short, young commentator. He's very good at arguing, but he always anyways.
That's Shapiro then. Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro. Sorry, yeah, Ben Shapiro. Yeah, right.
I said Dave Shapiro earlier, but that was my bad.
Oh,
yeah,
right. Yes, that's it. Ben Shapiro, right. He stated in one of his conversations that rap music is not good because it lacks melody and any sophistication. And it lacks
melody and any sophistication. Let me tell you, the idea. I'm sorry.
Exactly, right. He talks about 2 million.
That's good. That's really good.
2 million reps per second, right? And he detracted on rap music, and I was just like, wait, hang on. First of all, the new age rap music that he so-called hates is melodic rap. I actually participate in that new age rap music. It's the whole singing rap thing anyways. So it's literally against what he's actually arguing about. Second, melody is not a prerequisite for music. It's rhythm or any form of expression. So he's already wrong on that aspect. Even when you come to rhythm, the rhythm has different melodies. It's just at a lower frequency, so it's difficult to break down using human ears. So the point I'm making here is that people like that and Plato, what they do is they have this idea of like intellectual idea of the hierarchies of the ruling class that are trying to create a certain premise, like this is what music is. And now there is some truth in it in relation to them and their social class. However, the social class isn't absolute reality. It's just a subsect of reality. So meaning that they are just representing their own bias. So ultimately, but at the same time, I can't say that all music or all art is equal, because I don't want to go down that path. What I would say is that there is an objective art that looks better, sounds better from a technical aspect. And then apart from the technical component to art, there is the feeling and the kind of more artistic sentiment that is contained within the social cultural norms. Now that is the extra component. That's like the third dimension to art. But the 2 dimensions are technicalities, and that can be judged.
Okay, Dr. Thunder, if you could, say what you wanted to say, but I don't know if there's a way of you addressing the question on, the melody versus rhythm. If anybody,
Yeah, we, I mean, I mean, again, I could talk for a long time. I'm really going to try to control this, but this is fascinating, and it's also it's right in my wheelhouse, and it's stuff that I think about all the time. I'm both a church musician and a jazz musician, um, um, and I have a high respect for European classical music, but I also understand in intimate detail the difference in primacy of rhythm and how important rhythm is to all jazz influenced, all African American music, all Black music, all popular forms of music, all commercial music. There's a primacy of rhythm that doesn't exist in European classical music. It's interesting. Ben Shapiro was a virtuoso violinist. It's something that people don't know about. A lot of people don't know about it. So he was very good, and he had a particular opinion about a particular kind of music, and it's very it's very common for folks to sort of be pretty myopic on certain topics. He's very good at what he does, but we don't have to agree with everything that he says, and he's not equally adept to discuss in intimate detail to everything that he discusses, and that's all right. Facts still don't care about your feelings. So, so okay, so there's that. I mean, we can go a bunch of different directions, but this whole idea that the devil's music, that whole thing is it's kind of an interesting concept. So one of the reasons why there's a problem with that, there's a scene. I interviewed Dr. T. Hassan Johnson last night, and that interview went live today around 4:00 or something. That was a really, really good interview. But I brought this thing up that I'm about to say in that interview. Now I forgot what I was going to say. Let's see here. So, I totally lost my train of thought. That's what I get.
You want to help him out, Kaizo, from your notes, Kaizo? We were generally talking about the devil's music.
Yeah. So the devil's music. So here's an issue with this idea about the devil's music. You remember that this is the thing I was going to say. You remember the Ray Charles movie, Jamie Foxx. Really, really, really good movie. I dig that movie. I watch that movie as much as I can. It's a great music, obviously, and the acting is terrific, and I think the storytelling is very good. There's a scene in that movie where they're at a club. They're playing one of his tunes, and some folks from the local church just happen to be at the nightclub, and they're going up and they're trying to stop the band from playing because their belief is that he is it's sacrilegious for him to play music that belongs in the church, that those rhythms, that kind of, that style of music that they were playing, that kind of feel, that those kinds of chord progressions, the particular things that the keyboard was doing, it's sacrilegious to do that in a nightclub, one of the issues is that if you go back further in history, one of the things that Martin Luther used to do is he would take pub tunes and then he would create hymns out of those pub tunes. He would re-lyric them. And they were played in church. Okay. There's also, there's several other issues with this. I played a gig with Mavis Staples with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, and she talked to the audience. She had this, she did this every night. We think we played that show. I think we did 4 nights with her. And she tells the story about how the Staples singers were taking on big hits for one of their big hits that was considered to be, again, like one of these, songs that you're not supposed to take that style of music out of the church, all this kind of stuff. And they got criticized for, that's, devil music and all this kind of stuff. And she said, the devil ain't got no music. Now that's a simple version of what I'm trying to say, but that's probably the most pointed and specific thing to say. The devil ain't got no music. He doesn't have art. He doesn't own any of those things. In the early church, there was a very, very simple, and this is before the Protestant Reformation, this very, very simple concept, and that is whatever is beautiful glorifies God. That's all it takes, is the beauty. All right. Now, there's a difference between liturgical music that functions, that specifically is used for a certain function, and music that is not liturgical. But this whole sacred secular dichotomy is a false construct. That it's not an early church construct, and it's only a construct that arises when we get to the Protestant Reformation. And I think also you start to see a lot of these other issues with the way that they evaluate art, and is this good art, is this bad art, what is the purpose of this, and all of that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, Baby Take Your Clothes Off, if that's the predominant lyric, then we can say, well, that music has a particular purpose, and we can analyze that and we can talk about that. But I think this sort of blanket to say, well, this is the sacred stuff and all of that stuff is the secular stuff, I think there are a lot of problems with that. And there's been so much mixing of styles that it's not like you can say, well, this is the pure church music. Well, wait a minute. That stuff was influenced by all the same stuff that blues, jazz, hip hop, R&B, everything else. If you listen to modern gospel music in particular, it's got so many influences of this so-called devil's music in it. So I think you wind up having a serious issue. There's a serious problem with that. You can't say consistent. Now, obviously, stuff like urination on the crucifix and stuff like that, it's like, some stuff, it's kind of like that's just going to have to be the outlier. I don't feel like I need to have a logical construct in order to accommodate that. That's just absurd. That's just like ridiculous. Those are
excellent. Yeah.
Melody. So quickly, I'll address melody. So music tends to have 3 components. It tends to have music, harmony, and rhythm. Those are 3 of the things that we talk about usually. In European classical music, melody and harmony are the most important components, and rhythm is seen as more of a byproduct of counterpoint. Counterpoint is just the internal voices. It's all of the music, how it lines up, and when different parts move at different paces, what that creates. Okay, so it creates different potential rhythms. Okay, but in African American music, it's totally flipped upside down. Rhythm has a primacy. Harmony and melody are also important, but rhythm is absolutely more important. So we talk a lot about how something feels. If it doesn't feel right, then it's not right. You know, it doesn't matter if you played the right notes. It doesn't matter if you played the right chord. If the feel is not there, doesn't matter. It's not there. And that's why groove in the beat, you know, that's why that stuff is so important.
So you mentioned 3 parts. So we're trying to help out our friend here, Snuggles, and I do music. I have my way of understanding it, but I don't have the formal language or something. So you have these 3 parts, right? You have harmony and melody, okay, and you have rhythm. So if one were to distinguish this, I think rhythm is probably the easiest one. Where you're like, okay, rhythm is in time, okay. Time is flowing by, and you have these little tick marks, okay. Tick tick tick, tick tick tick, or tick 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 tick, or tick tick tick, whatever it is, okay. That's rhythm, right? Then what would you say melody is? Because obviously melody also is in time, but what is the difference?
The lead singer is singing the melody. So if you hear music, whatever songs you love, the part that everybody knows, the melodies, those are the melodies, the stuff that you can sing. That tends to be the melody. The harmony is the sort of it's the chords, it's the backing track, you know, it's the notes, it's the other notes that are played simultaneously that cause either tension, the feeling of a tension, or the feeling of a resolution. That's basically what harmony is.
So for me, when I write music, right, it comes in parts, obviously, but a whole part, just to answer, I'm just trying to put some kind of descriptive bow around what you described brilliantly in a technical way. So this whole music will come to me. It's da 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 da. That's just some melody. It may be part of the chorus, it may be part of something, who knows. But that da 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 has a chord progression already embedded in it, right? Regardless of what key I end up playing it in, right? It's gonna be dun dun dun, or whatever that chord or whatever that thing is, right? So there are keys that can be played in there. That's the harmony, right? But the da 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 da, that's your melody. And then our drum guy comes in. Do, 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 do. Yeah, right. Am I making sense, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah. I mean, it is very common for sort of singer-songwriter types to hear the melody first in their writing, and then good melody will do a good job of implying the harmony, and a good melody also has rhythm embedded in it. So there's some overlap in these terms. They're not mutually exclusive necessarily. So
Yeah.
you know, when you say da 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 da, I mean that has a strong rhythm to it. It does imply, I mean, there's a variety of different chord progressions that could work with that, but it does imply a particular kind of chord progression, and then from the chord progression you can easily pull out what maybe the bass player is going to do, what the drummer is going to do, what the guitar player is going to play, and all of that. So so like I said, it's not the terminology is not mutually exclusive, but basically the melody is what is the thing that you want to sing. It's the part that you hear you want to sing. The harmony is either the sensation of tension or resolution, and the rhythm is the pulse, the thing that's driving the thing forward, the feel, the way that the music makes you feel as you listen to it.
Right.
Excellent. So Kaizo, do you have a last word? And then I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Yes, I know we were talking about meditation, and then we took hard turn into red pill, divorced Dr. Dre, ended up in aesthetics, talking about why Plato and Ben Shapiro are elitists and so on and so forth. So,
Right.
what you got to say, Kaizo?
So in relation to how like melody and rhythm can be put together, so I'll give you an example. So this is an example of a rhythm / melody. So it's like, yeah, so that's like an example of like a rhythm, and you got a bit of melody in there. So there's some repeating note progression that is going to be in a certain key, but you also have some kind of rhythm that kind of puts it into check. And so something like that could actually be played by the bass player, and then you could play chords around it, and then build some kind of meta structure from it. I think ultimately for music to exist, you have the different cultures that prefer, or I guess they uphold certain kind of components to music more strongly than other cultures. So what I've noticed from African culture, and by African I guess I mean Ghana, Nigeria, Congo, etc., those kinds of countries, is that they tend to strongly prefer rhythm, even stronger than melody. Meanwhile, countries more in parts of East Africa, so like Ethiopia or Somali, they actually like the rhythm, the melodic component a little bit more. But then again, it depends on the specific tribes anyways. So it tends to be, I guess, maybe it's it has something to do with some components to do with meditation. So in a lot of African communities, music is used for ritualistic practices, at least in the ancient times. So whenever the music was utilized there, it was there to sort of summon some kind of vibrational energy state. So everyone dancing along a certain kind of low vibrational frequency would connect everyone to that kind of rhythm. It's almost like you're just you're all dancing to the same beat, literally and metaphysically. Meanwhile, in European kind of context, melody was far more kind of seen as a more important component. Of course, that's where the Ben Shapiro's and Platonic supremacy comes in, because of course in their traditions that it does seem like it holds more. And I guess from Ben Shapiro's logic is that melody has more complexity, at least the way he represented it, right? So you have you can break the tones, you could create different levels of connections there, but ultimately that's where the jazz comes in. Jazz is like a mixture between the European classic music as well as some African rhythms, and then you do create that kind of new musical admixture, which takes both sides into account, and then you have this kind of new birth of both the feel. So the feeling, which is like the improvisation. I mean, people used to say things like Jimi Hendrix was so great because he never played any song the same way. I'm convinced more that he couldn't play the same song the same way. He was so creative that actually playing the same way, the same song would actually almost be more difficult than just playing it differently each time, slightly. So to him, his mind was just programmed to want to improvise, to find slight differences each time that he would play. And I would say that it's not just African American, it is generally African to kind of prefer the whole real-time ideation in terms of music. So discovering things in real time. And we'll get this into a different discussion, but this goes into the whole this goes into the whole differences in preferences, like how European-based logic comes into systematizations of things into things to be learned on books. Meanwhile, African intellectualism comes into making sure everyone is so high level that they can understand things in real time. So there isn't that much focus on actually writing things down, because most people understand it. Imagine this: if you can understand and feel things in real time, why write it down? So, right. So we'll get into that at a different time.
I like it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Dr. Thunder, and thank you very much, Kaizo, and our other guests earlier on in the stream. Peace out, and while I wrap this up, I'll go ahead and mention again that Dr. Thunder and myself will be coming to you live and direct in your YouTube app, in your Samsung and your iPhone, available everywhere, PCs and Macs, every last week of the month, okay? Starting the last week of this month, we'll be coming at you with a fresh show. Watch out for the flyers and so on and so on. Jonathan, thank you very much for the $50. That's very, very generous. That's heavy hitter, okay? $20 gets you in the sponsorship tier, ladies and gentlemen. And as I said, I do now have a Patreon, okay? We're going to be figuring out what we're going to be doing in there in terms of the giveaways and the next level type membership. But you can feel free to go in there and drop $1 a month right now. No one's going to stop you, okay? Better get on the train before it leaves. So, ladies and gentlemen, from aesthetics to metaphysics to ethics, and then to practical things such as the mastery of your subjective consciousness, how it all ties in and ties back out. This is part and parcel of the philosophical mind work, the philosophical mind frame, where over here we try to make it very measurable, very simple, very actionable, no BS, no woo-woo, no nothing, okay? Where we can explain everything to a 5-year-old, but we can still weave in and out. We can bob and weave and we can dance, okay? We can dance, we can sing, we can play some guitar, we can talk about aesthetics, we can talk about Plato, why Plato was wrong. All while chewing gum and drinking Guinness. Yes, or eating jollof rice in Kaizo's case. Today, how to meditate using the breathing, ladies and gentlemen. Basically, we have options. Just like if you're trying to do cardio, you can swim, you can run, you can rock climb or cycle or play tennis, volleyball, basketball, soccer. But you're doing something that utilizes your heart and your lungs and the vascular system such that they get strengthened, they get stamina, so on and so forth. How do you make something better? You use it formally. What are the forms we were talking about? We're talking about the forms. The forms are the games. They're the games, right? The machines, the treadmill, the running, the playing, the dribbling, okay? Those are the forms. Picking up a dumbbell and doing curls, that's a form. Formal use of something makes it better. That's the only way our body works. We, as of yet, have found the secret little, we're not yet, we can't do that thing yet where, I just look at this, I look at the barbell or I look at the gym and all of a sudden I get yoked or something. No, I actually have to use it. Use it or lose it. That's a proposition under which we live. Okay, use it or lose it. In order to maintain it, you got to use it. In order to improve it, you got to use it. So we're using concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity in the various media that is afforded to us, the various fodder that we have within our subjective consciousness. Within our subjective consciousness, we have feelings in the body. They're internal feelings. They could be of a emotional nature or a non-emotional nature. We have external perceptions. We have images in the head and talk in the head as well. All of these can be used as a way of exercising concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? The playing field upon which we want to practice our concentrate or master our concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity is the playing field of our subjective consciousness. So it makes sense that we will go there to the feelings in the body and the images in the head in order to exercise our concentration, because that's where we want to master it. That is the place. After all, as Dr. Thunder said, where that is very important, that could be the difference between you ending up at a hospital with an aneurysm or not. The difference between you having all kinds of high blood pressure or not, right? It's real. It's so real. It's realer than anything else. It's where you start from. It's your basic center, your subjective consciousness, ladies and gentlemen. And it's very practical. It's not like, oh, it's just something you do and you can brag about. No, it's how You get to high level doings, ladies and gentlemen. You want to do anything at the highest level? All right. You're going to come into that room and you're trying to negotiate some kind of a deal. Okay. And you have, everybody there is smart. Everybody there has experience. Everybody there has done, 70,000 deals or whatever before. They all know their stuff. They're sharp. And guess what? The higher you go, you're also going to find people who do things like this, because guess what they tell you, right? The Tiger Woods of the world, the CEOs of the world that get people to come teach them these techniques and so on and so forth. If Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, and the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies are telling you, yep, this meditation thing, yes, this is what we do. If they tell you that, then you should know that this is a very practical thing. Okay? These are not people that are out there in woo-woo land. Results matter. And this is how you get the results at that level. Because everybody there, as I said before, already has all the other things which are a given. But do they have mastery of subjective consciousness? Do they know exactly how to transmit the sensation of calmness around a room? Do they know exactly how to deal with all the perturbation that occurs in crazy situations and be a still center around which that occurs? Okay, this is the capacity that we're using. We talk about using breathing. Okay, we talk about breathing in, holding, and breathing out. And in doing so, you are going to be using your sense of equanimity to hold that position. When you hold the breath, you're going to need your sense of equanimity to hold that position. You're going to then get more sensory clarity as you do this. Practice this today at home. Okay, when you go to bed, lay down on your bed. Don't cross your feet. Okay, uncross it. Lay up. Get yourself in the right position. Remember, poise and posture is key. Poise and posture is key. Okay, this is not some kind of sloppy, we'll just do whatever we want. No, formality is key. The form, in other words, the counting. This is what I'm doing is key. You know what I mean? Like you have a structure. I'm going to focus on the left side of my body when I breathe in and then breathe out, and then focus on the right side of my body. I'm going to do that for 30 minutes or until I stop or something like that. In other words, there has to be some form to it. Okay, when you drift away, drift back. So we talked about breathing in, holding, and then breathing out. We also talked about the case of the relaxed exhale, where you breathe in and rather than forcing air out, you let the air come out of its own accord, and you simply watch the universe breathe the air out. The atmospheric pressure push the air out, feeling the rib cage come down, the shoulder come down, as though it was someone else's rib cage and shoulder. You are by default, you're practicing concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity, okay, within this landscape of the feelings in the body, using breathing as the way of getting in. Okay, when we talk about the effortless inhale, the effortless exhale, circular breathing, the cold shower type stuff, but the first one, which is simply just breathing in, holding it, breathing out, that's your beginning point. Then you can get into the breathing in, holding, and try to do the effortless exhale so that you fight against the urge to push the air out. That urge is a feeling that you're using as fodder, as weight, as resistance against your equanimity, against your concentration. It wants you to do something, but you're calm. This same ability to be calm, whether it's fighting against the urge to inhale or exhale, is the same ability to be calm in whatever situation you may be in. Okay? And as we alluded to earlier, yes, this does make you better at all the weird, dirty, kinky stuff you like to do. Of course, it does make you better at that too. It makes you super good. So let that be an impetus, okay, to get your breathing exercising down, get your concentration, sensory clarity, equanimity, so you can master feeling, image, talk, subjective consciousness, so we can kill it out here in 2021, because the game's not waiting for anybody, right? We got to go out here and kill it. One more time, my name is Ike Ogiamin. Over here, we have a good time talking about being and doing, being better and doing better, ladies and gentlemen. And today, We did the second part in a multiple part series on how to meditate using access point as the body, internal sensations, non-emotional internal sensations, using breathing as an access point. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks for those who super chatted. Thanks for you guys who hit up the Cash app. I have a Patreon now as well. We'll be building some things out. I'm going to join the Clubhouse thing. I'm going to start posting regularly on Instagram. We're going to go all out. We're going to go crazy. You know what I mean? Ow! We out.
On the shore, relentless in the war, the legions in our hearts, shed waters in our balls, the spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest, the cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding, so sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon, guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching, the spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching, the spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding, so sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon, cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching, the spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching, the spirit and the women fight the battle within. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching, the spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching, the spirit and the women fight the battle within.